Yo, what's going on, Dragon Ballers? Welcome back to another beginner's guide video. One that you guys were asking for, and one that I really wanted to do because I've been playing this deck a lot, is the Frieza swap archetype out of Wild Resurgence. What we'll do today is we'll go through what you want to mulligan for, and we'll go through a play-by-play turn progression so you guys can see how I pilot the deck, and hopefully you guys can emulate this and kind of pick it up and learn as we go along. That being said, if you guys are new, make sure to subscribe, hit that bell so you never miss a video, and let's go ahead and jump right in. Of course, we will shuffle and randomize our deck, and we will go and draw our first 6 cards to see what we get for a mulligan. Now, to be honest with you guys, I don't really want to keep any of these cards. You could make an argument for the 3-drop Frieza because we do want to swap into that. However, I'm going to go ahead and throw this whole thing back. Now, this is an unfortunate thing where if you don't see anything you want in your opening hand, the post mulligan get a little bit sketchy, so I'm going to go ahead and find a couple cards we want to start with just for the sake of this video going a bit more smoothly. So Frieza Call is great to start with. You can start with Frieza Call or your 1-cost Frieza Bitter Scream. Above that, above all else really, you can start with any number of copies of Return of the Army of Terror. It's just that the Frieza Call grabs the 1-drop specifically and puts an extra card in your drop area for Robotic Riposte, among other things. So yeah, Frieza Call is really good to start with, and then Return of the Army of Terror lets you grab anything else you might want. Now, to be honest, that's all I really need to guarantee start with for the beginning of the game. Just taking a look through, maybe there's some other matchup dependent things, like for example, if you're up against Android 21 or a Floodgate heavy deck, you might want to look for copies of T-Blow in your opening hand, or Cold Bloodlust, the 1 Cold Bloodlust we are allowed to play. If you do hit your secret rare in your opener, I would definitely consider or advise you to keep that. Not even consideration, just keep it for sure. Anything else here I think is pretty much okay. If you're up against an aggro deck, I'm also cool with keeping any regular super combos as well. But for the sake of this, we will just go ahead and grab these 2 cards. And let's say we drew these Pulse Mulligan. Let's go ahead and grab some other stuff, see what our other 4 random cards are. Alright, so we have an Overwhelm, which is unfortunate because obviously a card we can't charge. We also can't really use it for a while, but the rest of it is pretty decent. So we'll go ahead and set our life. Now, same thing as the Gohan Beginner's Guide. We'll assume that we've gone first, and for the most part, we'll just simulate what our opponent might do to us. Obviously, this is going to be different every single matchup, so you're going to have to get your reps in for sure, but this is the general play-by-play that I go ahead and follow through. So of course we will start by charging. Since I have 2 copies of Frieza Call, I feel perfectly fine charging 1. This permanently sets up Robotic Riposte, which is really good. And then we'll go ahead and activate our Frieza's Call. Now I want to go ahead and activate Frieza's Call before activating my leader's top 5 effect, because I know I already want to get a 1-drop out of the deck here. So I might as well just take a card out of the deck that I don't really want to search, lower the odds of finding that. So we'll go ahead and do that. We'll go ahead and shuffle, and now I'm going to use my leader's top 5 search before I use Return of the Army of Terror, because this lets me search literally anything I want in my deck that is a Frieza and has swap. So if I miss on a 3-cost swap here, that's okay because I still have Return of the Army of Terror. So we'll go ahead and use a leader effect. We'll make sure we randomize the deck, peep top 5. We will go ahead and add a copy of Return of the Army of Terror. Now, we see our secret in our top 5, which unfortunately we can't add it, but at least we know it's in the deck and not in our life, which could be a good or bad thing. If it was in our life, we can maybe get it early off our life. If it was our last life, that would be unfortunate. At least we know it's in our deck and we have the opportunity to draw it. So now I will go ahead and activate 1 copy of Return of the Army of Terror. I'll go ahead and search my deck. I will grab a 3-cost swap. Now, you can grab a plethora of different 3-cost swaps. You can go ahead and grab Cold-Hearted Behavior if you need the removal, but obviously going first, we wouldn't really need that. You can go ahead and grab Frieza Overflowing Confidence, which will allow us to make more Z energy, which is really good. Or you can go ahead and grab Frieza Provoking Attack, which has Deflect against matchups that you might need that. I'm going to go ahead and grab Overflowing with Confidence because we're going first, so the Deflect's not going to be super relevant, nor is the removal. And this is in rest mode, so we have to swap this turn because we want to get this thing off the board and not let our opponent attack into it. So yeah, we're going to use that 1 copy of Army of Terror. And I'm not going to go ahead and use the other one because we have our ideal 5-drop in our hand already. Even if we didn't have the 5-drop in hand, I'd probably hold off on using this copy of Return of the Army of Terror because next turn we will get a leader search, right? So I want to get all my available search options before I go ahead and fish for what I need exactly. So we'll swap off our 1 cost. Don't forget the leader reduces the swap cost by 1. And we'll go ahead and play Frieza Overflowing with Confidence. I'd be super impressed if our opponent could get this thing off the board on exactly turn 1. one, because again, we're assuming we're going first here. So I think this is generally pretty safe. So let's go ahead and pass to our opponents. They do whatever they do. Let's say they play a 1-drop of some sort, and let's say they attack our leader, which, you know, they will usually do that to draw their card. We'll take a leader damage. Now we'll go ahead and pass back to our turn. We'll draw a card, 1-tap, and now we have to choose an option for charging. I will probably go ahead and charge Metacooler Infinite Terror here, because it's only really viable when we're on our Z leader or have a Z battle card in play, and we're probably a decently long ways off from doing that. So I'll go ahead and charge that there. Now I'll use my leader effect to go ahead and look at the top 5. So don't forget that most often you can awaken on turn 2 in this deck. So for that reason, I want to make sure I use my activate main here first so I can get my draws on both sides of my leader. In this case, I think what I'll go ahead and search is Frieza Provoking Attack, because as we get later into the game, the possibility of our opponent counterplaying our 1 cost into our 3 cost becomes higher and higher. So I want to have that deflect option just for in case we need to reestablish a swap chain. And that's a very common thing with a swap based deck, is knowing when you have to reestablish a chain. If you get your chain blown up at any point, you definitely want to go ahead and make sure you can fix that. So our leader's alternate awakening condition is when we have 2 or more energy and we activate swap on a yellow Frieza, we can draw 2 cards and take life down to 6 and then flip over. Before we do that, I want to attack with Frieza overflowing with confidence, because the backside of our leader says when a Frieza with swap and cost of 3 attacks, we look at top 3 and we use a Frieza army to combo. So if I attack with this on my awakened side, I would technically have to combo 2 cards, which would be a cool 29k attack, which might be better for late game, but I only get to Z charge 1 of those cards. So for that reason, I am going to go ahead and attack with overflowing with confidence. Look at the top cards. Now, this is very, very important. Understand the wording here. When this card attacks, look at up to 3 cards from top of your deck, then use up to 1 of the Frieza armies with its skills negated for the turn in a combo. Because it says look at up to the top 3, we are allowed to look at the top 1. So that's a regular super combo. We cannot use that. Now we're able to look at the top 2, and that's a Frieza army. I want to stop right there, because what if that 3rd card is my secret rare or a super combo or something I don't want to bottom deck? I'd be forced to bottom deck it. So we hit a valid target. We're going to stop there. We're going to go ahead and throw the regular super combo to the bottom of the deck. Extremely unfortunate, but it is what it is. So that's 24k. We make our Z energy. Now we can activate swap, which again, thanks to our leader reducing the cost, is going to cost 1 yellow. We will resolve our swap and go into Frieza waiting to see. Now our leader auto can resolve. We can take a life. We can draw 2 cards. And we can flip over. Now, we have a couple awkward things on this specific turn, right? It's a great thing we've established Frieza waiting to see, because he does for us what Sin, Shenron, Cold-Hearted Shadow Dragon does for so many other yellow decks. He negates the effects of a card played during our opponent's turn. Unfortunately, this has to activate on the first battle card our opponent plays. Sin, Shenron does not. It has a bit more flexibility of being able to activate whenever you want to, so your opponent can't really bait it out as easily. But the other problem is we don't really want to attack with this card unless we know for certain we can defend it on the following turn, and that is super matchup dependent. So I'm going to assume it's going to be very difficult for us to defend this card, in which case I don't want to attack with it because it is a barrier blocker and I want to preserve my swap chain. However, our leader's backside effects are tied to activating swap to draw a card and attacking with a 3-cost Frieza in order to make more Z energy, right? So we definitely want to try to resolve those. Now here's the thing. I could keep this 1 energy open for Robotic Riposte, which would be the safest play if I was afraid of my opponent having some insane turn 2, which there are not many decks in the format that have some insane turn 2. So I do feel pretty confident in tapping out here. So what I'll do is I'll play my 1-cost Frieza, and now I can swap back into a 3-cost Frieza. Now, what I want to do is specifically swap into Frieza Provoking Attack, because we have the same dilemma of if I attack with Overflowing Confidence, I combo 2 cards on 1 swing, and I don't get to Z charge both of them. In this case, with Frieza Provoking Attack, when it's played, I can look at top 5 cards, add a yellow Frieza to my hand, shuffle my deck, and if I added a card, I place 1 card from my hand on top of my deck, which actually sets up our leader auto very nicely to just know that top card's a Frieza army, and then combo with it. But now, before I use Frieza's auto in order to look at the top 5, I want to resolve my leader's auto to draw since I activated swap. That's because I'll draw an additional card and I won't have to worry about drawing what I top deck with Frieza Provoking Attack. So we'll get our card draw. Wow, that happened to be our secret rare. That is absolutely incredible. That's exactly what you want in a perfect scenario. Now we'll go ahead and use our Frieza provoking attack auto. So we'll go top 5. And we have 3 options. We're definitely gonna go ahead and grab Riposte here, and that is so good about this deck and this archetype that it can search Robotic Riposte super easily. We don't really need, like, we already have a 1-drop. We also have a 3-drop on board and a 3-drop in hand. So, and we also have like Return of the Army of Terror if we ever need to search it. So we don't need those cards. We'll go ahead and shuffle up here. And now, because we added a card, we have to top deck a card. So I will go ahead and top deck Overflowing with Confidence. And again, that's incredible that I can top deck that card, because now when I attack with my leader, what did I tell you guys before? You want to look at just the top 1 before looking at anything else to see if it's a valid target for comboing. We know that it is a valid target for comboing because we put it on top of our deck with Provoking Attack. This is my leader auto, by the way. When I attack with a Frieza with a cost of 3 and swap, I combo one of the top 3 cards in my deck. And now if these are like super combos on the top 2 here, I don't have to bottom deck them. We make that Z energy absolutely incredible, and we can swing with our leader if we want to. If we're trying to play a bit of a slower game, we want to like maybe stall our opponent's awaken a little bit, we could try and do that there, or we just go ahead and throw the attack. Again, I'm not attacking waiting to see because I don't want it to get popped. So we have a pretty nice size hand here, 10 cards, pretty respectable. We go back to our opponent's turn. They do whatever. Let's say they clear Provoking Attack. On turn 2, it's going to be very difficult for a lot of decks to actually employ barrier removal. So let's just say we, I don't know, take 2 damage. We have a nice 12 card hand here. We go back to our next turn. We untap. We still have our waiting to see, and maybe it negated the skills of something our opponent played, maybe a dual attacker or something, who knows. And now we go ahead and charge. We have a couple options here. I could see charging the army reinforcements because we're already at 4 life, although it is one of our better defensive cards in the deck. I could see charging T-Blow if we're just not up against a floodgate heavy matchup. That would be the case if we were up against red, for example. So maybe we are up against red. Let's just go ahead and charge T-Blow just for the sake of ease. But again, if you are up against blue or yellow, I definitely do not recommend charging Tyrannical Blow. All right, here we have a lot of options. We still can't really swap into our 8 cost because we have to have 4 more energy to do so. So we're not quite worried about that. The waiting to see is still just chilling on our board, waiting for that to happen. So what are we going to go ahead and do with this turn? We technically have the option to Z-Awaken, but I want to hold off on that as well because our Z-Awaken reduces the cost of our swap into our 8-drop greatly. So I don't want to do that at all. So what I might do here is establish another 3-drop swap, maybe even go into a 5-drop. And that would keep us open for 1 energy to use either Robotic Riposte and or Vegito Overwhelming Might. The other cool thing about that too is if I really wanted to be defensive, let's say we are up against a red deck once again, they might have a really big turn 3. That's where I want to go ahead and keep maybe 2 energy open to really be able to defend what they might be doing. So I want to at least ensure my leader's autos here. So I'll go ahead and play my 1-drop. And I'll go ahead and swap into a 3-drop. Once again, we can use Frieza Provoking Attack. But first, I want to resolve my leader auto to draw a random card. Now let's go ahead and use Frieza Provoking Attack. Let's take a look at the top 5. Let's see what Friezas we have here. We have 3 options, and I believe this can add any Frieza we want. However, we have an 8 cost in hand already. I don't really know that I want too many 10k combos in my hand, so I'll probably go ahead and add another 3-drop. So we'll go ahead and shuffle up. Now we have to decide on which Frieza is best to go back on top of our deck. Honestly, as awkward as it is, it's probably the 3-drop we just added to our hand to ensure our Z energy. You could also make an argument for a copy of Riposte, or maybe even a copy of a 1-drop, but we still have Return of the Army of Terror to go grab any 3-drop we want from our deck. However, we are running a bit low on 3-drops because we did lose 1 to Destruction last turn. We've got 1 in play, 2 in Z energy, 1 in hand. So actually, maybe the correct play here is to put the 1-drop back on top of the deck. We go ahead and attack with this. We know the top card is a Frieza we can combo with. We go ahead and do that, and now we're making Z energy. We have 3 Z energy for our Z Awaken next turn, which is super ideal. Now we can attack with our leader if we wanted to. I'm probably still going to leave this in active mode. However, you could get a little greedy by attacking with this because again, we're choosing to leave 2 energy open on this turn, maybe 1 for Riposte and maybe 1 for Vegito if we absolutely need it. Now this is super important. If you're up against red and they play Broly Crown of Retribution, go ahead and use that Vegito right off the bat because now your opponent is prevented from looking at your hand since you only have 1 energy open. Another cool thing too is that if your opponent's only attacking with a bunch of like 15 or 20 Ks, a lot of times I like to use Vegito to combo instead of actually blocking with it, because if you block with it or don't block with it the entire turn, it goes to the drop either way. If you combo with it, you get to make more Z energy. But definitely keep in mind, if your opponent has big attackers, like maybe a 30k coming at this guy, for example, you totally want to block that because you don't want your 5-drop swap dying. So let's just say we blocked with that. Let's just say maybe we also riposted this turn, who knows. And then we make it back into our next turn with 4 life once again. Now here we'll go ahead and draw a card. We just drew a second copy of Cooler, so I'm pretty comfortable with charging that second copy. If you're up against a blue deck, however, especially an Android based deck, I would probably not recommend charging any copies of Cooler, but in this specific scenario, it's okay. Now we got a few things we want to do here because we have our leaders autos on this side as well as our Z Awaken if we plan a Z Awaken this turn. So I'm just going to pull a Z Awaken out of the Z deck just so we can do some comparisons. So when this card's played in your leader area, you draw a card. That's great. You've also got the other auto of when you attack with a Frieza with a cost of 5 or more, you get to look at top 3 and you get to combo. So we get to make even more Z energy. This is a pretty hefty 3 Z energy cost, so we'd like to take advantage of that if possible, right? And I'm not Z Awakened yet, I'm just putting it over here. Now we want to try to resolve this leader's autos as many as we can before we actually Z Awaken. So how can we do that? Well, we can go ahead and attack with provoking attack. We can then look at the top 1 and it's a valid target, so we'll just go ahead and combo it right away. This way we don't put any super combos at the bottom of the deck or anything. And we also want to resolve this leader's draw before we Z Awaken. How do we do that? By activating swap. Now you really have to keep in mind how much energy you plan to use on this turn and whether or not that much energy is worth getting this draw, because we might also want to keep a couple energy open for defense, in which case we would use 1 energy as Z Awaken, 1 energy to then swap into our 8-drop, and then maybe leave 2 energy open after that. However, we do have our secret rare in our hand, so I'm down to get a little bit more greedy just for the maximum draws. So we need a 5-drop in our hand to swap into. So I'm going to go ahead and activate Return of the Army of Terror because at the moment we don't have any 5-drops. So I'll go ahead and search through my deck. I can go ahead and grab Goku versus Frieza Spirit Clash. I can also grab Limitless Raw Power if I wanted the double strike. That'd be kind of cool. But let's just say I go ahead and grab this one. All right, now for 1 energy, we'll go ahead and activate our Frieza Provoking Attack. We'll swap into a 5-drop, bring the 3-drop back to our hand. Now, I think it's just best habit to use leader auto first to draw. So we'll do that. And then Golden Frieza is great here because he gives us barrier removal as well as drawing us another card. So that's always great. It's also got the activate main of getting us back into a Frieza for a 1-drop if we want to restart a chain. So that's cool too. Now, what are we doing next? Next up, we are going to Z Awaken. So we have 4 Z energy. Let's just go ahead and use 3 of them to get Z Awakened. Now, what I just do is I normally put my leader in the warp, but I know that our Z leader eventually is going to go away, so I'm not going to do that right now. So this has Z stacked for the Frieza army, the cost of 1, so we will go ahead and grab our Sorbet, which is meant to go under our Z leader. And then when this card's placed in the leader area, we draw another card, which is incredible. And we have the additional ability to reduce our swap cost by a total of 3. So Frieza Waiting to Sea's original swap cost is actually 4. So getting that down to cost 1 is going to leave us with 1 energy open for defense. Now, what I actually want to do is probably attack with Spirit Clash first, because this is the one I most likely want to actually activate the swap on. That is because Waiting to See still has barrier, so even if we do attack with it, it's still got more protection than this card actually does. So what I would probably do here is combo this riposte if this attack wasn't negated, because 25k is such a good number and making the Z energy is also really good. So I go ahead and do that. I'd activate the swap on this guy, bring out our 8 cost boss card, and then you can resolve all the effects on this, you know, KOing everything in rest mode, ignoring barrier, super solid. And now we have a huge double strike dual attacker. So if the opportunity presented itself, we could totally go ahead and drop our secret rare on this. But again, like if we are afraid of like what our opponent might have on their next turn, maybe we're not going to go ahead and do that. But we can use our leader effect now to look at the top 3. Again, only look at the top 1 first. That is not a Frieza army. Look at top 2. That is not a Frieza army. Look at top 3. We might be getting low on Frieza armies. Yeah, we are unfortunately going to whiff on that. But that's okay. Not the end of the world. Still a huge 30k dual attack double striker. Hopefully that gets to attack multiple times. And now you have the option of attacking with waiting to see, or you can just go ahead and leave it in active mode for the blocker aspect. And then we have a 20k leader, so let's go ahead and just, like, you know, fully take advantage of that, right? Swing with 20k, and now we have 1 energy open for defense, as well as being backed up by our SCR and our Frieza army reinforcements. Now, let me not forget, we also have 8 cards in our drop area, so if we need some extra removal or just extra pressure for potentially maybe going for game, we have the ability to overwhelm here as well. Don't forget, during your next turn, you have the potential to play Sorbet, which is almost like a Poutine, just like coming right into play and tapping anything 7 or less when the condition is met. That's super solid. But now going back into the next turn, we are going to basically lose our Z leader, so you definitely want to have, you know, played the Sorbet if at all possible. And we're gonna go back into our leader and then come up on turn 5. So we're coming up on turn 5 here. The world's kind of our oyster. We can still continue to make Frieza plays. I mean, maybe this 8-drop got removed, maybe it didn't. The 5-drop, again, still likely that it's like kind of stuck around because of the barrier and we haven't really been tapping it too crazily. So we charge here, and then we have any number of options. Like, if this thing survived, I would love to just like swing with it and probably go right in with a cooler. But if we need to drag the game out, I mean, we drew Sin, Shenron, Cold-Hearted Shadow Dragon, which is also going to be a great piece of board presence due to the barrier, as well as just like punishing whatever our opponent plays that we want to negate. And this is the ideal thing to set up, is like this card with waiting to see, because waiting to see auto negates the first thing they play, and then Sin, you have the option to use it whenever you want, so they can't bait out your Sin nearly as easily because they got to commit some sort of play in order to make you use waiting to see, right? So that's even something you can do on turn 3 if you really wanted to in the right matchup. You can go ahead and try to set up a turn 3 Sin, Shenron, Cold-Hearted Shadow Dragon. But hopefully, guys, this gave you a pretty good idea of how to play the deck. Pretty much turns 1 through like 4.5, 5-ish. If you have any questions, please do drop them down in the comments. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.